the Jesus way.
Oh, the Jesus way
Is the way of peace.
is the way of peace.
Oh, the Jesus way.
Oh, the Jesus way
Is the way of peace.
is the way of peace.
Oh, the Jesus way is the way of peace. When he is king, all wars will cease. May his peace begin with me.
Coming to you from the pristine watershed of Camp Myrtlewood in southern Oregon is this edition of Brethren Voices, featuring Bill Jolliff, who during his journey has been a professor of literature at George Fox University for nearly 3 decades. He's an active writer and researcher. Many students know him as the guy that played banjo on stage during chapel. Hello, I'm Brent Carlson. Welcome to Brethren Voices. Bill Jolliff is known in Brethren circles as a frequent featured performer at the annual Song and Story Fest that has been held for the past 24 years in various places around the United States. Bill Jolliff grew up in Magnetic Springs, Ohio, and Bill says the springs are actually magnetic. Jolliff started playing the guitar and banjo with his grandmother when he was 15 years old. During his high school years, he started forming an interest in American literature, especially the works of Robert Frost and John Steinbeck. He studied English at Ohio State University, where he earned his PhD. Bill had been a professor at Messiah College near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and his teaching has continued for nearly 3 decades at George Fox University in Newberg, Oregon. Bill has continued to play the banjo, creating songs by using his extensive background in literature as a foundation for many of his songs. His musical interests have carried him for 50 years, and we share some of his works and humor in this edition of Brethren Voices.
This year. And I came up in old-time country music, and if there's anything that you learn, I mean, it is drilled into you. It's that you come out on stage and you don't say a word. You jump right in with a real barn burner that just grabs them by the hair, and you never let go. Got to be smooth, got to be professional, got to be driving. I've lived by that for 50 years, until today. Feels really funny. Actually, I didn't think you all would be here. It's a little surprising. I mean, I knew you'd be at the camp, but I didn't know that you'd be in the tent. I thought everybody would take off down to the river after Peg, because they said they're having the Susan Boyer Family Memorial Swim. I remember seeing something like that as a child. I was traumatized. Fortunately, there's a guy I pay $100 an hour to help me with that. I'm walking down that long, dusty road. Man, I'm walking down that long, dusty road. I'm walking down that long, dusty road, Lord, Lord, and I will not be treated this way. I'm going where the climate suits my clothes. I'm going where the chilly winds still blow. I'm gonna work and watch my garden grow, Lord, Lord, and I will not be treated this way. I'm going where the water tastes like wine. I'm leaving while there's still a little time to sleep beneath the shadows of the pine, Lord, Lord, and I will not be treated this way. I'm walking down that long, dusty road. I'm walking down that long, dusty road. I'm walking down that long dusty road, Lord, Lord, and I will not be treated this way. I'm going where the cell phones never ring. I'm going where there's no slave or king. I'll find a place I'm not too sad to sing, Lord, Lord, and I will not be treated this way. I'm going to find a place that feels like home. I'm going where a man can be alone. I'll find a place that don't need to get stoned, Lord, Lord, and I will not be treated this way. I'm walking down that long dusty road. I'm walking down that long dusty road. I'm walking down that long dusty road, Lord, Lord, and I will not be treated this way. Oh my.
Bill's students really appreciate his humor, and it comes out in his music and concerts. His faith is expressed through his creativity of song and music.
Now, before I forget it, I need to tell you from my wife Brenda, whom some of you know, who used to come every year, that she gives y'all a great big hug. All right? Good deal. So you received that hug, right? Now, what I'm wondering, is there any chance that some of you want me to give her a hug back? Hold your hands up. Okay, hold them down. How many of you would like me to give her a kiss? This could work out. Well, enough of that foolishness now. We got to get down to serious business. When the world is blessed with peacetime and the weather's looking fair, you can preach what you want to preach and no one really cares. But when storm clouds start to gather and the winds of war to blow, you can read the threats of vengeance on most every face you know. You've got to choose. You've got to choose. Does your God wear red, white, and blue? Or do you know the one who died for you? There comes a time you've got to choose. When all the news is good news and there's blue sky overhead, everybody loves their neighbor then, just like the master said. And you gladly do for others what you'd have them do for you. But when war's on the horizon, are the Savior's words less true? You've got to choose. You've got to choose. Does your God wear red, white, and blue? Or do you know the one who died for you? There comes a time you've got to choose. There are nations on this earth, but there's a kingdom in the heart. And the Lord has called disciples to set themselves apart. If the king's the one you follow, it's your life that you may lose. You cannot serve two masters, and you're gonna have to choose. You've got to choose. You've got to choose. Does your God wear red, white, and blue? Or do you serve the one who died for you? There comes a time you've got to choose. You've got to choose. You've got to choose. Does your God wear red, white, and blue? Or do you love the one who died for you? There comes a time you've got to choose. There comes a time you've got to choose. There comes a time.
Bill Jolliff admits that he really likes some of the old gospel songs, and he really enjoys occasionally working new and different lyrics into those traditional songs and melodies.
You know, we do a pretty good job, I think, with inclusivism as progressive Christians. Boy, you know, we work that into the sermon every chance we get. We would work it into the prayer at committee meeting if we had prayer at our committee meetings. And buddy, that's devout. All right. But sometimes we do have trouble being inclusive with some of the other folks that are weird in some kind of a different way, or we're uncomfortable with them. I don't want to say any names, but I just tell you I have trouble eating Cheetos anymore. You should never tell hair jokes. On that resurrection morning when the trump of God shall sound and the dead will all be raised up from the grave, there's going to be some troubled faces when we take a look around, and you can bet your soul that one of us will say, oh, I never could have dreamed that you folks could be redeemed. It just may be that heaven's gates are wider than they'd seemed, and eternity's just long enough to let the truth come clear. It's surprising, but I'm glad to see you here. So who's gonna be there anyway? Got any ideas? You can sing them with me if you know them. There's gonna be Turks and jerks and cannibals, communists and kings, lots of Catholics and Creeks and Greeks and Jews, black folks from darkest Africa, white folks from Des Moines, there'll be Pharisees and politicians too. You'll see ranting Pentecostals dancing under tongues of fire, all us Quakers sitting silently alone. Really alone. Hare Krishna's chanting gospel with the downtown Baptist choir, doing the steps good Christians never could condone. But then they never would have dreamed that you folks could be redeemed. It just may be that heaven's gates are wider than they'd seemed, and eternity's just long enough to let the truth come clear. What a hoot to think who all might end up here. There's a light that shines in everyone who comes into this world. It's a spark of truth that's waiting there to grow. And regardless of the words we use, it's love that fans the flame as the inward light of Christ begins to glow. It's a many-colored kingdom with a wise and gracious king, and now it seems that heaven's gates are wider than we dreamed. If we open up our minds and hearts, the truth of Christ is clear, and there's no better place to let that start than here. If we open up our minds and hearts, the truth of Christ is clear, and there's no better place to let that start than here. Well, thank you very much. I think that's true, you know. I wrote it back before I believed it. That's true. But sometimes you write better than what you are. Other times you probably shouldn't have written. Well, you know, the nice thing about getting to teach literature at a university is you get to spend a lot of time reading old books, which is an absolute blessing. And then you get to spend time rereading and rereading and rereading. The real joy of being a lit prof is that you understand what it's like to read a book 10 times, especially when it's a book that keeps getting better on the 10th time. Most folks never get that pleasure. Here's something I found in an old book. I'll read you a passage. I think it's part of the story. And behold, a lawyer stood up to put him to the test, saying, "Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" He said to him, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" And he answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And the young man said to him, "You have answered correctly. Do this and you will live." No, that was Jesus to the young man. And the young man, who's the lawyer, he says, "But he, desiring to justify himself, said to Jesus, 'And who is my neighbor?'" And in the footnotes, I think it says, and the lawyer thought, "I know I can beat him on a technicality." And that's how the story goes. Traveler all alone on the road to Jericho was preyed upon by highwaymen who laid his body low. They beat him and they stripped him and they left him good as dead, when a stranger knelt beside him and held his bleeding head. He didn't know that poor boy's name. He became his neighbor just the same. He didn't know that poor boy's name. He became his neighbor just the same. Yeah, the lawyer and the Pharisee both passed him by that day. They turned a deaf ear to his cries and looked the other way. But that old pagan stranger knew the ways of God the best. He hauled him to the country inn and laid him down to rest. He didn't know that poor boy's name. He became his neighbor just the same. He didn't know that poor boy's name. He became his neighbor just the same. He said to that innkeeper, "Here's 2 silver coins for you. Pay yourself sufficiently and do what you must do. I'll be back in a week or 2, but this warning I do tell. I've made this man my neighbor, and I trust you'll treat him well." He didn't know that poor boy's name. He became his neighbor just the same. He didn't know that poor boy's name. He became his neighbor just the same. When Jesus told that story to the crowd that gathered round, each true heart heard the message that the Master handed down. Now who was that man's neighbor? That's the question Jesus sighed. The one that stopped the bleeding, or the 2 that passed right by? He didn't know that poor boy's name. He became his neighbor just the same. He didn't know that poor boy's name. He became his neighbor just the same. Thank you. I can't tell you how meaningful it is to me to be singing along in a verse and think, gee, I wonder what would happen if I would signal them to sing. And I signal them and they sing. Wow, that's like worth the trip. I might have even driven to California for that. I don't know. It's a long old haul down there.
Michigan next year.
You know, I really love the old-time gospel songs. Sometimes I feel almost bad about how much I like them. There's certainly good reasons not to, but they just sort of suit me. And it's one of those situations where, you know, like some of my friends, my high church friends or real progressive friends or Presbyterian friends, you know, they understand this passion. They've heard me perform and they listen to these songs, and I get the feeling that they're in the back of their mind thinking, he's such a nice man, but such taste. Oh well, it's always nice to be tolerated. So I'm going to sing you one of my very Pure D favorites right now, and if you happen to know some of it, I hope you'll sing it along with me. Nothing fancy, just a regular old gospel tune that means a whole lot to me. Well, are you weary? Are you heavy-hearted? Tell it to Jesus, tell it to Jesus. Are you grieving over joys departed? Tell it to Jesus alone. Tell it to Jesus, tell it to Jesus. He is a friend that's well known. You've no other such a friend or brother. Tell it to Jesus alone. Do the tears roll down your cheeks unbidden? Tell it to Jesus, tell it to Jesus. Have you fears that to men's eyes are hidden? Tell it to Jesus alone. Tell it to Jesus, tell it to Jesus. He is a friend that's well known. You've no other such a friend or brother. Tell it to Jesus alone. Are you troubled at the thought of dying? Tell it to Jesus, tell it to Jesus. For Christ coming daily are you sighing? Tell it to Jesus alone. Tell it to Jesus, tell it to Jesus. He is a friend that's well known. You've no other such a friend or brother. Tell it to Jesus alone. He is a friend that's well known. Tell it to Jesus alone. Well, thank you very much. You know, I had this epiphany about my old-time gospel song fetish the other night. Like a lot of you, I was on YouTube looking around and, you know, kind of surfing between Sufi teachings and primitive Baptist hymns. It's kind of an alternation thing. Because I believe that life needs balance. So there you go. I got my old buddy JD over here and my old buddy JD over here. Got my JD Vance, got my JD Roomie, and everybody's working out just fine. But this is a serious part. It occurred to me, and I was not kidding about the feeling kind of weird about how much I like these things. It occurred to me that what some of these songs, especially these late 19th century revivalist kind of songs, what they're talking about, at least sometimes, when they talk about Jesus, is the same old thing that JD over here, JD Rumi, is talking about when he's talking about the beloved. JD, I mean, you know, Jalaluddin Rumi. And then I had been teaching a little bit on Rumi, and I started going through some of the Sufi poets and reading them with Jesus, and oddly enough, going through some of the hymns and think, what if this said the beloved? And I understood it the way that and with the sympathy that I give it when I read the Sufi poets. Hold that in mind just a second. I'm going to tell you something else. There's a story about Daniel Boone, and as we all know, Daniel Boone had to work his way into the evening. But Daniel Boone, you know, was one of the first explorers out on the Cumberland Plateau, and there was no GPS back then. There was no MapQuest. You know, there was not even a house of pancakes to go in. It was awful, and yet he never seemed to get lost. And he was once asked if he'd ever been lost when he was out pioneering on the frontier. And he said, apparently with great honesty, no, I was never lost, but once I was awfully discombobulated for 4 days. Well, I told you that to tell you this, and I'm not kidding. When that thought crossed my mind, that just maybe I could take the old-time gospel tunes and to talk about Jesus with the same seriousness that I take more socially acceptable, politically correct sources, I was discombobulated. I was kind of in a daze for about, I shouldn't have used the word daze, but I was in a daze for 2 days. It was that unsettling to me. And I think in a good way, but I'm not sure. I'm not dead yet, so we'll check. But as I was thinking about that, this is the song that kept coming to my mind. If you know any of it, sing along. There is a place of quiet rest, near to the heart of God. A place where sin cannot molest, near to the heart of God. Oh, Jesus, blessed Redeemer, sent from the heart of God. Hold us who wait before thee, near to the heart of God. There is a place of comfort sweet, near to the heart of God. A place where we our Savior meet, near to the heart of God. Oh, Jesus, blessed Redeemer, sent from the heart of God. Hold us who wait before thee, near to the heart of God. There is a place of full release near to the heart of God, a place where all is joy and peace, near to the heart of God. Oh, Jesus, blessed Redeemer, sent from the heart of God. Hold us who wait before Thee, near to the heart of God. There is a place I long to be, near to the heart of God, where my beloved waits for me, near to the heart of God. Oh, Jesus, blessed Redeemer, sent from the heart of God. Hold us who wait before Thee, near to the heart of God. Well, I thought I might try this one. It's kind of a political song, so I was warning you ahead of time, but it's one of those where I'm trying to figure out politics. You know, I've been working on this obscure, no one will ever read it book for the last 2 or 3 years, and I've been in it so hard and in it so heavy that it's like all kinds of stuff has gone on in the world, and it's like I've missed it. I mean, it's been a tunnel. Some of you that write know how that gets, and then you walk out of that tunnel. I mean, it's weird things. Have you heard of this guy, Trump?
Oh, what?
Just because I wasn't paying attention. All kind of wild things like that will happen. But, you know, we should learn from history. Anybody know about the battleship of Maine? You know, it's the boat that the Spanish didn't blow up in the harbor that helped precipitate the Spanish-American War, and of course we got our old friends the Lusitania, that boat that of course wasn't carrying any armaments or anything like that. And of course in our own memory we've got the Gulf of Tonkin, you know, stuff that you kind of got to make up if you want to get a good old war going, and who doesn't want that? So I took the melody from that old-time song that was written about the Battleship of Maine, and I put it to the Gulf War back in the early part of this century. What a funny thing to say. Because of the, what's called WMDs, and you remember what WMDs are. And I had kind of retired this song, you know, these weapons of mass destruction. I had retired them. I thought, that's trouble with topical songs, you know, they wear out. You get a good one and you sing it a few times and it's toast. Or it blows up on you. But anyway, then when this stuff was in the news a while back about trying to get a good war going with Iran, I thought, well, maybe the WMD song isn't quite worn out yet, so it is a little vulgar. I'm warning you ahead of time. I wouldn't want you to be misled by me. See if I can pick it. Now over there across the sea they've got another war. No one quite remembers what it is we're fighting for. Well, it's all about them WMDs. We're talking about the weapons made for mass destruction, The ones we figured out were a rhetorical construction, them aggravating WMDs. Well, it's all about them WMDs. Them WMDs have destroyed my life of ease. Well, them aggravating WMDs. When George, he called for volunteers, I knew I had to go. They told us we'd be coming home in just 6 months or so, once we found them WMDs. In searching for those weapons, we surely did persist. We'd have found them quicker if they really did exist. Oh, them disappearing WMDs. Yes, it's all about them WMDs. Them WMDs have destroyed my life of ease. Well, them disappearing WMDs. Now when I think of what we paid, my blood begins to boil. It surely is expensive to reduce the price of oil. Them's mighty pricey WMDs. I miss my frisky, loving wife and rolling in the clover. These wars should just be fought by people 55 and over. Just let them, they're WMDs. Well, it's all about them WMDs. Them WMDs have destroyed my life of ease. Well, just let them, they're WMDs. Had a war with the great nation Spain.
We are featuring Bill Jolliff and his music in this edition of Brother in Voices. Bill's stories and music are often a platform for a dialogue of a hurting nation. For example, take the way Native Americans and immigrants have been treated over the years.
This country has often, everybody ready? This country has often really had, are you ready? This country has often really had trouble with immigration policy. I would not lie to you. It's true. You heard it here, folks. But if we look back in history, we see that in fact a time or two it's been a problem. And so, of course, one of my heroes is Woody Guthrie. I want to sing you a true song that he wrote back in about 1946, I think, about that problem that existed back then, but which thankfully we fixed. Some of you know the chorus, don't ever be shy. The louder you sing, the better I sound. Well, the crops are all in, the peaches are rotting, the oranges are piled and their creosote done. They're flying you back to the Mexican border to spend all your money to wade back again. My mother's own mother, she waded that river. It took all the money she made in her life. My brothers and sisters, they worked in the fruit trees. They rode the trucks till they broke down and died. So goodbye to my Juan, goodbye to Rosalita. Adios, mis amigos, Jesus y Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. Oh, they will call you, will be Deportee. Some of us are illegal and others not wanted. The work contract's out and we have to move on. 600 miles to that Mexican border. They chase us like outlaws, like rustlers and thieves. Well, we died in your hills, we died in your deserts, we died in your valleys, we died on your plains, we died on your trees and we died in your bushes, both sides of the river, we died just the same. So goodbye to my Juan, goodbye to Rosalita, adios, mis amigos, Jesus y Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. All they will call you will be Deportee. Now, when Woody wrote this song, he wrote it because there had just been a terrible wreck in which they were flying several hundred migrant workers back to Mexico, and they didn't make it. The sky plane caught fire over Los Gatos Canyon. Like a fireball of lightning, it shook o'er the hills. Now who are these friends who are scattered like dry leaves? Radio says they are just deportees. Is this the best way we can grow our good orchards? Is this the best way we can grow our good fruit? Scatter like dry leaves and rot on the topsoil, be known by no name except Deportee. So goodbye to my Juan, goodbye Rosalita, adios, mis amigos, Jesus y Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. All they will call you will be Deportee. Last summer, a few months ago, of course, I was looking around at the immigration situation on the internet and decided that Woody would not mind if I would add just one more verse. Well, the guards took our babies in El Paso City. In government buses, they hauled them away. I dream of their faces behind wire cages. As I hear them crying, I hear myself say, goodbye to my Juan, goodbye Rosalita, adios a mis hijos, Jesus y Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. All they will call you will be Deportee. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. All they will call you will be Deportee. Deportee. Well, thank you.
Can we make requests?
I don't know if I have the mind for it. What do you have in mind? I'll give it a shot here in a second. While I'm singing this next one, I'll be thinking of the words. That seems like a plan. What could go wrong with that? Oh my, let's see. Oh yeah. Well, this one, I often, when Ken sends around the themes, I look at what the themes are, and then I think about what would be really good to go along with that theme, and then I go back and do what I was going to do anyway. But not without having thought about it. But this year I thought, here's a song that I haven't sung for years that I would dig out, because it really fit the idea of a voice crying in the wilderness, I thought. It's another one of those songs that's based on something I read in an old book. And this one is one of my favorite characters from this old book. And I've known about him since I was but a little wee professor with tiny patches on my tweed coat. And what I liked about him was that I'm told that this prophet, it says it right in the scriptures, he was a herdsman and a dresser of sycamore figs. You know who is that? Amos. Somebody nailed it there. Bonus points. It's about Amos, who was a herdsman and a dresser of sycamore figs. Now, what I couldn't figure out as a little kid is, how do you dress a fig? And then it struck me that it's the guy who puts the cookie part around the Newton part. Well, how can you not like that? Amos was a preacher man, a prophet of the Lord. He spoke his truth to power, and his tongue cut like a sword. He told the priests and presidents they needed to repent. He told them how God felt about their wicked government. Oh, that Amos walked alone some way. Oh, that Amos, well, he had his say. Amos was a rebel, he was loud and he was bold. With a mouth like that, he never had a chance of getting old. Amos did not worry much about some piddly sins. He preached against the systems where the seeds of sin began. To those that made the workers slaves and stole the widow's mite, that's where Amos took his stand and where he pitched his fight. That Amos walked alone some way. Oh, that Amos, well, he had his say. Amos was a rebel, he was loud and he was bold. With a mouth like that, he never had much chance of getting old. He did not like religion as he saw it all around, with fancy shows and threats and blows to keep a poor man down. It was nothing but a carnival, and he knew what that meant. Day-old bread and circuses to keep the sheep content. Oh, that Amos walked alone some way. Oh, that Amos, well, he had his say. Amos was a rebel, he was loud and he was bold. With a mouth like that, he never had much chance of getting old. Well, I reckon that old Amos did not make too many friends. I'm thinking when his life began, he knew how it might end. He called down kings and bureaucrats, and he never cracked a smile. And they tell us he got murdered, but I hope he died with style. That Amos walked alone some way. Oh, that Amos, well, he had his say. The final game of compromise was not the game he'd played. Don't you wonder what old Amos just might preach about today? Well, thank you very much. This has been a great evening. It's a great honor to get to play for you, not one that I take at all lightly. So even though we had not been planning to come down, I was very delighted when Ken called and said, "Well, you know, we're in Oregon. Come down and do some music." And so it's a blessing for me to get to do so and to pull some of these songs out and give them another run. So I'm going to do one more number for you here, and we'll see if I will. You'll have to do the harmonica part in your head. Okay. This is a song that I wrote with not to go into names, but some of the dear folks from this camp in mind that have meant so much to me, and who have taken a kind of, I suppose, almost an iconic sort of representation of what it might be to get old in a godly way. I've got half of that down pretty well. And so here's for working at the other half. If you know the words, please do sing along. In fact, if you know the words, you might be one up on me. But thanks once again. Have a good night. I'm a serious man, I lead a serious life. I got a serious job, I got a serious wife. But the weight of the world can take its toll. Oh why God die and leave me in control? But as my time runs down, I do begin to see just what he might intend for me to be. Just a fool, a holy old fool, too empty to be useful, too funky to be cool. Give me grace and space to laugh at half of what I do, and let me be seriously a holy old fool. Just a holy old fool. I've turned the world, I've felt the strain, I marched for peace, and I've prayed for rain. But the rain don't rock, and the peace don't roll. Between me and you, what do you do with a burned out soul? But as my time runs down, I do begin to see just what the Lord's intending me to be. Just a fool, a holy old fool, too empty to be useful, too funky to be cool. Just to give me grace and space to laugh at half of what I do, and let me be seriously a holy old fool. Just a fool, a holy old fool, too empty to be useful, too funky to be cool. Just give me grace and space to laugh at everything I do, and let me be seriously a holy old fool. Just a holy old fool. Thank you much. I really appreciate it. Give Peg a big hand for that good show. And all those folks.
Thank you for joining us for Brethren Voices. Let us pray that 2021 will be a good year for all of us, allowing us to build a better world of unity based on love and harmony. This is Brent Carlson wishing you peace. And please wear your mask for others and yourself.
Here's the chorus. I feel like traveling on. I feel like traveling on. My heavenly home is bright and fair. I feel like traveling on. Try that again. I feel like traveling on. I feel like traveling on. My heavenly home is bright and fair. I feel like traveling on. Let others seek their home below. I feel like traveling on. Where flames devour and waves o'erflow, I feel like traveling on. I feel like traveling on. I feel like traveling on. My heavenly home is bright and fair. I feel like traveling on. My sights are on that sacred site. I feel like traveling on. That shines beyond my soul's dark night. I feel like traveling on. I feel like traveling on. I feel like traveling on. My heavenly home is bright and fair. I feel like traveling on. I'm sailing on that inward sea. I feel like traveling on. Where my beloved waits for me. I feel like traveling on. I feel like traveling on. I feel like traveling on. My heavenly home is bright and fair. I feel like traveling on. Try that again. I feel like traveling on. I feel like traveling on. My heavenly home is bright and fair. I feel like traveling on. Man, I feel like traveling on. Give yourselves a great big hand.